And in this series, we're looking at different perspectives of the three main people involved in the story. The lost son, the older brother, and the father. So last week, we looked at it from the lost son's perspective, and we saw the dangers of seeking out our own desires to the extent that it becomes exclusive, all-encompassing, and damaging not only to oneself, but also to one's family and friends. We saw the parallel in the relationship with the father and his son that came home, that he forgives him, and beyond that welcomes him and celebrates his return as he has come back. He can be part of the family. And we see how this illustrates the example and the image that God has for us, that we all can come home. We can repent of our sin, and God is excited. God is happy when we come home. And that's what this is all about. Today, we go the next step further and we look at the perspective of the older brother. And to understand him, we have to go to the start of the story and to the end, because that's where he shows up. The parable that Jesus teaches with this begins by identifying that there's a father who has two sons, a younger and an older, so we know that he's there in the beginning. But then the older brother kind of goes away. He doesn't have lines until the very end of the parable. But to understand why he's so upset at the end, we have to know what happens in the beginning. Because here's what happens. The younger son comes to his father and says, "Give me my inheritance now." Now, that may sound odd to us in the modern day, but this was a huge offense in this historical time. And that's why the brother's so upset, because right from the get-go, his younger brother has just spoken to his father in a disrespectful manner. But beyond that, what he's saying to his father effectively by asking for the inheritance is, "You're dead to me, so just give me what's mine." Let that sink in for a second, because that's what the brother just witnessed. He just saw his younger brother go to his father and say, "You're dead to me, just give me the inheritance of mine, and I'll go off and do my own thing." Yeah, I can imagine he'd be pretty upset with his younger brother. But his father accepts the request and gives him his portion. Because in this time, inheritance was divided pretty evenly in that sense. What would happen is you divide the estate, the property, whatever it is your family had, equally except for the oldest sibling. They got a double portion. So since there's two sons, you would have the land divided in thirds. 2/3 going to the older, one going to the younger. And as we hear in the parable, the younger son squanders it away. So the younger brother gets to witness whatever happens to that inheritance. Because it says in here that it's his estate, it's land. So he watched land that they owned get sold and used for nothing in his eyes. Again, that has to hurt to witness. And so, for a time, the younger brother's fate kind of goes by the wayside, and we hear how he ends up finding himself in a land that has a famine and gets himself employed. And we talked about that last week. He kind of comes to this ironic situation of needing to go home, and goes back and makes a pitch to say to his father, "Take me back, and I'll be one of your hired servants. That'll be enough." But the father flips that around and welcomes him back and throws this big old party. And that's where the older brother comes back. Because he's in the fields, he's working. He's done a hard day's labor, and he's coming back home, and he starts hearing music and dancing. And so he calls one of the servants over and says, "Hey, what's going on?" And he gets the report that his younger brother has returned, that his father has killed the prized calf that they usually reserved for big celebrations, weddings, or major feasts. So something big has just gone down. So the younger brother is not happy about it, because he's still in the mentality of being real upset because about what happened. And this is just a new injury to that insult. And so we pick it up there in verse 28, that the older brother doesn't go into this big old celebration. And that's significant for a couple of reasons. Because as the oldest son of his father, he had a seat of honor reserved at that table. At that right-hand side side of his father. That was his reserved spot. So it's very visible to everybody there that the older son is upset and not participating in this celebration. He's nowhere to be found. So they know it, the people observing this feast. Moreover, he's standing outside the tent. There goes Mr. Motorcycle. So the older brother stays outside the tent, and the father goes beyond what probably could have been done. He goes outside and pleads with his son, please come in, celebrate with us. And now he has some words for his pop. He's got some issues here. He says, look, all of these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me as much as a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, notice the words change, not this brother of mine, it's this son of yours. Like when you know you're in trouble, and as a parent you say to your spouse, hey, that son of yours, wait a second. The language changed, but it's deliberate. This son of yours who squandered your property with prostitutes comes home. You kill the fatted calf for him. And his father says back then, my son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. Quite literally, now that the other third of the property is going. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is now found. You see, when we looked at the prodigal son's perspective last week, we said that this kind of mirrored us, people that have sinned in the eyes of God and come home, and God accepts us. So if the lost son is us, it's the sinner, the symbol of the sinner coming back to God, and the Father is God who accepts, who's the brother? Because typically when Jesus teaches something, he has an audience in mind. He's usually saying these parables to certain people, and therefore if he illustrates something like this, usually he has an idea of how it's going to fit. Think about it. When he talks about having faith of a mustard seed, he probably said that to people that knew what a mustard seed was and how it grew. When he talked to Peter and called him to be a disciple, he said, hey, I will make you a fisher of men. Talking to a fisherman. He knew what that was. So whoever Jesus was speaking to probably knew who these people were and who they symbolized. But for us, do we know who that is? Who's the audience of this parable? It's not rhetorical today. Do we know? The so-called righteous. Because this parable is one of three in a sequence. Because at the start of chapter 15 in Luke, Jesus talks about who his audience is and then tells the parable of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and then the lost son. There's three in a row teaching the same thing. So he really wanted to get whatever it was, the point of this, home. But in chapter 15, the start of it, it gives the setting of all this. It says Jesus was sitting with some sinners. And the Pharisees and teachers of the law grumbled, saying, this man eats with sinners. And so Jesus told them this parable and began teaching the story of the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son. And this is the third parable in the sequence, and in this parable we have the audience as a key role, symbolized as the older brother. Because the Pharisees are complaining that Jesus is hanging around some sinners, not them. What's the older brother complaining about? He's complaining that this guy, his father, is spending more time with the younger son, who's done wrong in his eyes, than with him. Jesus isn't happy about it. So he gives them a story so they can see the error of their ways, saying, wait a second. You know who God is. You're going to complain that God's spending time with new people, spending time with sinners and redeeming them. You're going to complain about that. What's going on? And so the teachings that appear in our second lesson make sense. Because it's there that we find where Jesus' heart is in all of his ministry. Because he gives us the great commandment. Love one another. And he specifies why. He says, I have told you this so that my joy may be complete in you. So my joy is to be part of saving people. My joy is loving you. And I want you to have that. So it makes sense why Jesus would see it as offensive if people are saying, wait a second, don't grumble because people are coming back to God, who you may have an issue with because you were once them. Because he said earlier on, farther down in that reading from John, that you didn't choose me, I chose you. So there isn't this self-righteousness at all. He's kind of putting that out there. That, wait a second, it's not like we chose God. God chose us and gives us forgiveness and grace. Not that we could ever earn it. It's a gift. It's precisely what Jesus wants to point out. Wait a second. You may know God, but that doesn't mean you get to be God and say, not you, you. No. In fact, the beauty of this, and seeing it from the brother's perspective, is that he has the opportunity to walk into that tent and celebrate what his father has done. He has taken a situation of bringing somebody back and capitalized on it. He's taken someone who was once ostracized and welcomed them home, brought them into the fold, and made them a critical part of the family once again. God has taken a sinner and made them into a saint. The opportunity is there to celebrate in that activity. But if we're not careful, we can slip into what the older brother does too, and not celebrate. And trust me, it's like any teaching that Jesus does. If we think we're above it, we're probably doing it. And if we humble ourselves and say, yes, I can be subject to that, then we're in a good way. Because it's good for us to know how easy it is, how easy temptation and sin can creep in, even to the best of intentions. And so, God is saving people all around us. God has saved each of us. He opened the door for us and didn't tell us we had to be a certain way. He didn't have a prerequisite for us to be in a relationship. And so we have that chance to let people know it's the same thing for them. And that we don't need to be judgmental. In fact, we can be celebrating because God's doing great things in our midst. God is saving people, and he invites us to love them back, just like Jesus loved us. It's a good cause, and it's worth living for each and every day. So let's be people who walk into that tent and celebrate the great feast God is throwing for all those that come on home, ourselves included.